Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you guys have fun plans. We did this in the afternoon, just in case you had fun plans tonight. I'm Margot Singer, professor in the English department, director of creative writing. And first of all, thanks for coming down the hill to this beautiful space. I hope you'll have time to look at the show in the various galleries. I want to thank a bunch of people. I want to thank Megan Hancock and Sam Smith from the Denison Museum for hosting us. I want to thank English department colleagues and others. Where is she? Jean McAlmont, our wonderful administrative assistant, and Tenzin Kunga for helping with this event. And a special shout out to Colleen Monahan-Smith from the Great Lakes Colleges Association, who's here today, which is very appropriate. So mark your calendars for our next Beck Series event. It's poet Sam Smith on February 28th. They'll be reading at 7:30 p.m. in the library, just to mix things up in the atrium. So there'll be posters going up about that. So on behalf of the Harriet Ewins Beck Endowment, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you novelist Tsering Yangzom Lama and essayist Lars Horn, who come to us as the winners of this year's Great Lakes Colleges Association New Writers Award. It's the 53rd award that the GLCA has given. The 13 independent colleges that are part of the GLCA confer the award each year on one book in each of three genres, poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. So we have two of the three prize winners here today. Publishers get to submit books to the contest. The rule is that it has to be the author's first book, first published volume in that genre. And the judges are typically faculty members of the colleges. So it was a particular thrill for me because I was on the fiction judging panel this time around. And I couldn't be happier to have both of them here today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about both of their books, and then Tsering is going to read first, and then Lars will read, and then we'll have some time for questions. And there's some books for sale in the back, which I'm sure they'll be happy to sign. And then you can go eat the rest of the goodies out in the lobby. Tsering Yangzom Lama's debut novel, We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies, has been nominated and shortlisted for so many prizes and awards that I'm not going to read them all to you here. You can look them up. But here is what the judges had to say about the book. Lama's beautifully crafted multi-generational novel asks what it means to lose and try to reclaim one's cultural inheritance. As children, Tibetan sisters Hamo and Tenki lose nearly everything when they flee Western Tibet and wind up in a refugee camp in Nepal. Later, Hamo's daughter Dolma and Tenki make it to Canada, but remain bereft. The novel traces a remarkable scope of time, geography, and culture as Lama writes through the exile of Nepalese after the communist occupation. Like the nameless saint, a sacred relic, worshipped by the sisters' exiled Tibetan community that is repeatedly stolen and reclaimed, they too are condemned to dislocation, yearning for their homeland and inheritance that has been lost and destroyed. Oracles, icons, and sisters connect as a way to share the history of a place and tell stories that must be shared to keep alive a vital part of cultural connection, which is not so much historical, but instead current and vibrant because of the stories that are shared. The novel speaks to the often forgotten tragedy of Tibet and focuses on individual and cultural trauma that follows over an ocean and into the lives of the people who know only loss. It sheds new light on important questions of colonialism and exile and identity. The management of time and characters makes the book a stunning read. So we should all get nice blurbs like that on our books. Tsering earned an MFA in writing from Columbia University, and her BA in creative writing and international relations is from the University of British Columbia. A lifelong activist, she's a storytelling advisor at Greenpeace International, where she guides and trains people around the world in storytelling. Born and raised in Nepal, she splits her time between Vancouver, Canada, and Sweden, and we're happy that she'll be here in Granville visiting a variety of classes this week. Lars Horn's book, Voice of the Fish, a Lyric Essay, won the 2020 Graywolf Press Nonfiction Prize and was named an honor book for the 2023 Stonewall Israel Fishman Nonfiction Book Award, in addition to the GLCA Prize. It was also an American Booksellers Association Indies Introduced selection. Calling it a mesmerizing debut, the GLCA judges note that Voice of the Fish, a Lyric Essay, is compelling and uniformly beautiful on every page. It charts a poet's attention to detail, a slippery, enigmatic thing, a thoughtful and imaginative rumination on the human body, art, illness, and family. Horn's prose questions probe ideas of performance and exhibition, and is impressively inquisitive, lyric, and rhapsodic. What a marriage of form to content. Horn uses a sustained water metaphor to float questions of trans-identity as they relate to the larger human quest to net meaning in a sea of indeterminacy. Voice of the Fish offers strangely subtle erudition, from the faulty eyesight of Greenland sharks to the Greco-Roman distinction between branding and tattooing. The range of information here never calls attention to itself, never makes a show of knowing. It all fits. The vignettes pace the reader, gathering momentum like a current getting stronger. Lars Horn is the recipient of fellowships from the Sewanee Writers Conference and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. They have published work in prestigious literary journals, including Granta, the Virginia Quarterly Review, and the Kenyon Review, and elsewhere. Initially specializing in phenomenology and visual arts scholarship, they hold MAs from the University of Edinburgh, the École normale supérieure in Paris, and Concordia University in Montreal. They teach at Columbia University in New York. So we'll start with Tsering, and then Lars. They'll read each for about 20 minutes-ish, and then we'll ask some questions and sign books. So welcome, Tsering.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah? Oh, this is very nice, very luxurious. All right. I just want to thank everybody for being here and for the GLCA faculty and the folks who have just made this amazing for me. This is my third college that I've visited so far as a result of this huge honor that I've received with this prize. When you start out, you don't know what's going to happen with the book, so this is just amazing. And special thanks to Tenzin for showing me around today and taking good care of me. Very dutiful. Okay, so I'm just going to read a little bit from about 80 pages into my book. This is in 2012, so a little more contemporary, takes place in Toronto, and one of the characters, Dolma, who is in her 20s, and her mom lives in a refugee camp in Nepal. And she's now Dolma's living in Toronto with her aunt, who is works in a hotel cleaning rooms. The street lamp emits a sickly yellow glow that filters into our basement window the same way it does every night. It's just enough light for me to find a clean shirt without waking my aunt in the next room. She's asleep at the kitchen table, her head bobbing above a dinner plate, her mouth slightly open. She must have returned from another double shift while I was napping. In the shadows, Shumotenki's face is all ridges and slopes, and she is so still and thin. I owe her everything, yet I cannot bear the sight of her frailty, the weariness she wears so nakedly across her face. My aunt brought me here, or I should say pulled me here, for that would be the closest approximation of our word, with my first plane ticket and my first passport. Don't be too clever when they check your papers, she instructed over the phone before I left for Tribhuvan Airport. Say nothing unless they ask you. Throughout my 2-day journey, I pictured a disastrous arrival in Toronto. I imagined being turned away just after landing. It happened to a cousin of a friend, and shuffled into a holding cell where I'd wait until I could be returned to Nepal. Even after the border agent stamped my passport, I picked up my suitcase. I expected someone to turn me back. It was only once I was in the apartment that I unclenched my teeth and let my eyes relax and lose focus. Then a new unhappiness set in, a new understanding that I'm still circling after 5 years in this country. My aunt was in pain, and so very alone. Her state had been unknown to our family and neglected for years. Sometimes she cries and cannot tell me why. Sometimes she stops on the sidewalk and laughs so loudly everyone on the street turns to look. Most of her struggles, her strange behaviors, remain private between the two of us. A stove left burning, days where she only drinks water, or when she turns off all the lamps and keeps the curtains drawn because light makes her head pound, her joints ache. She tells me that even her eyes fail her on some days. Was this country the cause? I often wondered this in the early days as I roamed my new neighborhood, along streets named King and Queen, although they were lined with low-income, high-rises full of black-haired foreigners like ourselves. Would my aunt be cured if I could make us wealthy, comfortable? Or if we became true Canadians with those embossed Navy passports? But it soon dawned on me that paperwork alone wouldn't be enough to make us belong. We wore our difference on our bodies, not just in our dark hair and brown skin, but in our posture, the slower, foreign rhythms of our steps. Amid the squat brick storefronts of Parkdale, Shumotenki and I walked with our necks pressed down by some invisible force, our line of sight hemmed in by the endless webs of streetcar cables above us. Along the side streets, we found our forgotten neighbors from Nepal. They now lived in houses cut into apartments, which were once halfway houses, and before that, the summer holiday homes of the wealthy. Nearby, just past the Gardiner Expressway, the gray expanse of Lake Ontario sent a winter draft we could not shake, and everywhere in the air there was a distinct feeling that our corner of the city was not the Western world, not the one we imagined, or the one we would ever describe to our relatives in the camp. Some triumphantly called this Little Tibet, but to me, this place is the camp built anew, a copy of home, another temporary stop in an endless journey. So with that depressing section, I'm going to move forward. This is now, by forward I mean backward. So my book oscillates between different times, which I think sort of reflects the ways in which the past is always happening for my characters. So this is in 1973, the refugee settlement where Doma's mom still lives. She has been there now 10 years, and the camp was supposed to be just like a temporary thing until they could go back to Tibet, but it's slowly dawning on everybody that this is not going to be temporary. So this is from Doma's mother's perspective. This is how the edges of our camp harden. We begin with the administrative building, pulling down the rotten grass-thatched walls, digging straight lines for a rocky foundation beneath the soil, mixing and slapping mortar with small sheets of metal in our palms. Climbing onto the roof, I see my old ropes still holding the bamboo together. It gives me no pleasure to cut the still tight braids with my sickle, throw the dead, fraying grass into the gorge, and watch them float down for the goats and cows to pick through. From the flat hill overlooking our camp, I see the men lay down new roofs of corrugated tin sheets, putting in place small meadow lakes that shine in the light. The sun multiplies before me and is never the same. Then the monsoon comes, and the rain too has changed. Against our tin roofs, the rain is no longer soft, wet taps from the sky, slipping onto our skin at all hours. Now the rain is made of nails, raging, threatening, but never breaking through. People now say with pride, "Our camp makes noise in the rain. We have no country, but we have a sound." In the same breath, we wonder, why did we survive and not our kin? What separates us from the ones who were caught, who starved, who were lost in the mountains, who did not endure the last winter, that last season of illness or melancholy? When I look around, I know the truth. Nothing at all separates us. We are not the strongest, smartest, or even the ones who wanted to live the most. It can only be the saint, the ancient Gu. A Gu is a statue. That through a series of karmic outcomes we cannot fathom came to reside in our camp, amid our group of orphans and childless parents. This small figurine is precious because of all who have held him, wearing away at his gold patina and earthen body. On his form we can see the traces of the devoted touch of so many people and places beyond our reach. The traces of my mother wrapping silk scarves around the Gu, my father's faint and final breaths, the unrelenting winds of the border, the shells that pounded a village into dust, my grandfather's wrinkled temple, and how many before that. Here for 11 years the saint has been carried from house to watch over our sick, our newly born, our betrothed. To enter into our dreams so we emerge with lost memories and premonitions. But Ashang Mingmar doesn't like to call the Gu the nameless saint. Ashang says we must find out his identity. We must take the Gu to a place where learned people can tell us his name. Maybe we need to go all the way to Dharamsala, the seat of the exile administration and home of the precious one. But it won't be enough to have his name. After knowing it, Ashang will want to offer the Gu to a monastery rather than keep the saint here in such poor circumstances. Some have shared their worry privately, but none of us would dare oppose my uncle's decision, for who could deny that the coup should be in a grander place? Still, I cannot accept this. The saint must remain here, where he chose to come. If the saint belongs anywhere else, it is with Samfel, whose uncle was chosen as the coup's last keeper. And someday Samfel may return. So Samfel is her childhood sweetheart that she met at the camp, and he's gone somewhere else. And Samfel's Doma's father, which, spoiler. I still think about him from time to time, that mysterious bliss that bloomed within my body when he first appeared along the river. How free I felt beside him, and how tethered I felt to him as well. All these years later, I still struggle to conjure any memory of the capital without him. I think about the little girl, too, the one who appeared when I fell sick. Yet all of that seems to fade by daylight. The day when Samfa and I were separated, on the bus ride home, I wove in and out of consciousness. While my ashang prayed over me, I felt my clothes soak with sweat, and my vision blur so much I thought I was going blind. We reached the camp at dusk, and Ashang carried me in just as he had carried Potundup's corpse out. He laid me down, covered me with his coat, and ran out for help. The hut was quiet, dark, and unsettled in a way I couldn't name. I sensed a presence in the corner just beyond my sight. "Hello," I croaked, trying in vain to crane my neck. The figure took a step toward me, bare feet rubbing faintly on the mud floor. "Are you the girl from my vision?" I asked. "Come closer." "Ajal Hamo," she said. It was Tenki, the little sister, Hamo's little sister. I had for once forgotten all about her. Mo Yutok flew in just then with a group of women. They circled my bed, murmuring prayers, and ferried off Tenki to live with another family in the camp until I was well again. For 6 days, the women dressed me, bathed my body with cold, wet cloths, and fed me broth full of buffalo fat. Chanting prayers, they drew plumes of juniper smoke around my limbs and against my chest and back. They even blew the smoke down my throat. When I needed to relieve my bowels, they suspended me over the edge of the gorge in the rain and hummed songs from home. I bled for the first time, floating in their arms above the river. "Her time has come," they whispered, and wiped me with leaves that remained behind in the ground, so darkly red I could see nothing of the green underneath. "What does the blood mean?" I asked. "Am I dying?" "It means you can give birth," Moyutok said, "even though you're still a child." "I'm going to have a daughter," I told her. "I saw my future, just like my mother used to." "Listen carefully," Lamo, Moyutok said, laying me down. "If you hear the spirits call you, don't reply. It's dangerous. We're too far from our land. The teachers who helped your mother are dead or beyond our reach. We can't know which spirits are speaking to you. All of that is behind us. Do you understand?" Moyutok's hand was like warm, crinkled newspaper. I wished she would lie down and wrap herself around me. If only she were my mother, I would tuck my hands into her shirt and feel the soft, warm skin beating around her heart. I could hold her loose nipple between my fingers, fall asleep the way I used to as a little girl. But Moyutok had her own losses and ghosts to tend to. Her daughter and husband were dead, and she was raising her only child, her only grandchild, who bore the same name as her dead daughter. "We could all go mad if we let ourselves," Moyutok said. "But you've survived, so you need to keep living. That's all there is." A new man has arrived, and word is traveling from house to house like a hungry crow. Yet hardly anyone has seen his face. The only souls outside at the time of his arrival were the roosters, the goats, and Tenki. She happened to be coming back from the river with laundry when she sighted the tall stranger walking alone on the dusty road leading up to the camp. She ran straight to the carpet factory, a basin of wet clothes dripping from her waist, to tell us about her good fortune. "Tell me exactly what he looks like," Dawa said, turning so forcefully I'm nearly thrown off the seat of suspended lumber. "He's so beautiful," Tenki says. I adjust myself and weave the last of this line on my side before hammering down the wool. "How's it look from down there?" I ask my sister. But Tenki is still thinking about the stranger. "Oh, shit, I forgot to ask his name," she laughs, her face flushed red. I went to reach down and tell her to calm herself, but I'm also curious. "I wonder who he'll marry," Dawa sighs. She takes the hammer from me and roughly pushes down the layer we've just finished. I cut out the long metal needle in the carpet, trim the extra wool, and begin the next line. The loom stretches up before our noses, a wall of hundreds of taut strings running from ceiling to the ground. My left hand clawed into the strings. I placed the needle to start a new line and weaved the wool thread repeatedly around the strings, tying it down at each loop. It's been a good season for carpet orders. The 100 rupees I earned from this rug will pay for Ashang's eye examination and new glasses. When this work dries up, I'll go back to picking and brewing barley wine. I recently learned how to make spicy mango pickles, just like the locals, so there's at least a dozen orders every month. But Tashi Temding, that's the handsome stranger, I soon learn, is not the kind to work with his hands. He is a different kind of beast, one whose beauty and confidence and fearlessness lead to various kinds of ecstasy and turmoil for everyone in the camp. If only he wasn't so good-looking. The words are uttered so often it prompts children to echo the phrase in high-pitched squeals. Going with the fashion of the day, Tashi wears brown pants that narrow at the knees and flare out over his boots. His shoulder-length hair is loose and curly, eyebrows thick, big nose, full lips, and his voice, he speaks in a low, lazy voice, as if what comes out of his mouth were the humming of his body. The impression he gives, and not just to Tanky, is that he has nothing to worry about. He is part of something bigger, like a mountain or the goddamn sky. Listening to him, I feel, despite myself, that the humming of his body is really the humming of my body. What is it about him? The power of Tashi Temding's mischievous smile and boisterous laugh, head thrown back, eyes squinting, feet thumping the ground, is felt almost instantly by the men, women, and children in the small camp he has come to live. All right, I'll stop there.
Okay. Sorry, I just struggled with this. There we go. Everyone hear me okay? Great. Thank you so much, Tsering, for that great reading. And also thank you to everyone who made this possible. I'm having a great time. So I hope you all enjoy all of the reading. But yeah, a big thanks to everyone at Great Lakes Colleges Association and the hosts here. I'm going to read an excerpted essay from my book, so a kind of slightly shorter version of it. Save us some time so we can get back to the food. Right, okay, here we go. What manner of land? Each December in Sicily's Syracuse, 60 men in green berets carry a simulacrum of Santa Lucia through the streets. Over 12 feet tall and sculpted from 200 pounds of silver, the martyr towers above the crowds. A dagger pierces her neck. A reliquary glitters in her chest. One arm cradles a palm leaf, whilst the other extends a dish from which flames leap as the saint's severed eyeballs survey the townsfolk. Venerated across Italy and Scandinavia, Santa Lucia or Saint Lucy is one of Christianity's oldest martyrs, perishing in 304 AD during the Diocletian persecution. Lucia's father, born to Syracusan nobility, died in her early years, leaving Lucia to the care of her widowed and ailing mother. In adulthood, Lucia, a devout believer, took her mother Eutychia to St. Agatha's tomb, a pilgrimage that not only cured Eutychia of a bleeding disease, but convinced her to distribute the family's wealth, as Lucia had long wished. Learning that Lucia was bestowing the family's heritage and jewels upon the poor, her betrothed denounced her faith to Paschasius, governor of Syracuse. Paschasius ordered Lucia to burn a sacrifice before his image. When she refused, he sentenced her to defilement in a brothel. And so it came to pass. Paschasius's guards went to escort Lucia from the governor's chambers and floundered. Lucia stood, impossibly, divinely fast. The guards yoked a team of oxen to Lucia, but still the martyr could not be dragged. They heaped wood at her feet, set torches to dry logs, but the flame refused to take. Instead, Lucia addressed the governor, prophesied, You will be punished, Pascasius. The Diocletian rule shall fall, Maximian's end calls. At this, Pascasius had Lucia's eyes gouged from their sockets and a sword thrust through her neck. Blinded, silenced, Lucia died. Other legends maintain that Lucia tore out her own eyes, sending them as a deterrent to an unwanted admirer. So anyone wants to avoid a Valentine's Day, this is... maybe I wouldn't recommend it as a method, but take them. Anyway, in both cases, Lucia's eyes are said to have been miraculously restored upon burial. The patron saint of Syracuse and Perugia, Italy, Lucia's patronage extends to martyrs, virgins, authors, cutlers, glaziers, saddlers, stained glass workers, and even salesmen. But above all, Santa Lucia is the patron saint of sight, the blind, and is invoked against ocular diseases. In iconographic representations, Lucia's eyes blink from salvers, swivel within the saint's own palms. In a painting by Francesco del Cossa, they bud from a tree branch. Presiding over sight and blindness, light and darkness, Santa Lucia is traditionally celebrated in the frost-bitten, dead hours of the winter solstice, hours when she rises, guardian of Earth's longest, darkest night. A sack slumps beside a grave. I dig. The spade rings into snow-choked soil, reverberates through oak, beech, lime. I take a pocket knife, slash the sack down the middle, and shake it, sulphurous, searing, into the pit. Clouds of yellow pigment sweep through the trees, crows squabble skyward, disperse. I brush yellow from my jeans, my t-shirt. Kneeling, I take an ex voto from my pocket, eyes hammered in silver, and push it deep into the powder and cover them both with earth. Beneath my feet, the soil burns. I wake, walk to the bathroom sink. I click on the light, hazy, flickering. Yellow cakes my lips. Royal Leamington Spa, UK, 6:30 a.m., winter solstice, 2013. Locking the door to my mother's house, I walked the 10 minutes to the local swimming pool. The night still lingered, metallic, biting, mist curled off the river, silver quickly followed by darkness. I pulled my Reebok windbreaker further up my face, pushed up the bank, and turned onto the gravel footpath. Some way off, beyond the trees, beyond the steep bank that saw walkers slide, almost fall into the churn, the river twisted between fields and glittering blocks of flats. As I watched the mist spiral above the tree line, I heard the crunch of trainers over gravel. In front of me, a man approached, white, 6 feet tall, light grey tracksuit, scarf wound about his mouth and nose. My breath caught. Get a grip, Lars. It's just a man out walking. I cleared my throat. Gone. Over. He kept walking. So did I. Street lamps pooled, splashed off the curb. Now and then the light poured across a car windscreen, rushed off the bodywork. Early that midwinter morning, I was minutes from reaching the pool. Minutes from my day, months, years of my life carrying on uninterrupted, when the man I'd passed decided I was the person he wanted to abduct. This man who jogged back, whom I heard before I felt, soft footfall, shadow, strange movement. This man who, under the smouldering orange of a street lamp, wrenched me back by the mouth. Quote, "There is the house whose people sit in darkness. Dust is their food, and clay their meat. They are clothed like birds with wings for covering. They see no light. They sit in darkness." End quote. The Epic of Gilgamesh. In 2014, scientists at Surrey Nanosystems revolutionized black pigment when they created Vantablack, a black fabricated by growing cultures of carbon nanotubes on aluminium foil. The resulting surface absorbed 99.96% of visible light, flattening all forms it covered. Infamously, the sculptor Anish Kapoor bought exclusive rights to Vantablack, a controversy that led fellow artist Stuart Semple to launch a rival, Black 3.0. Has a dream, went for it. Affordable, workable like acrylic paint, the product is available to anyone providing they sign a contract agreeing to withhold the pigment from Anish Kapoor. In 2019, MIT scientists Brian Wardle and Kehang Kui unveiled a new blackest black, this time absorbing 99.995% of all light. The color, an accidental coincidence of their research, was engineered from growing carbon nanotubes onto chlorine-etched aluminium. The material's light absorption, coupled with its unprecedented heat-resistant properties, attracted the attention of the aerospace sector. The imaging equipment and telescopes used in aerospace research require coatings black enough to reduce excess glare from cosmic bodies, yet strong enough to withstand a rocket launch, a pairing that had proved difficult until now. When questioned about his team's discovery and the global surge to create an ever blacker black, Wardle, professor of aeronautics and astronautics at MIT, simply remarked, "The blackest black is a constantly moving target. Someone will find a blacker material and eventually will understand all the underlying mechanisms and will be able to properly engineer the ultimate black." A man suspended in light. Or water. Was it water? Both perhaps. Light shattering softly through dark lagoon. The images keep slipping from me. Only one surfaces, whole, glassy, blindingly bright. An oleander hawk moth emerges, hesitant, twitching, from the man's mouth. I remember the leather of his glove, cold, blunt force, blood. His hands clenched my teeth, tongue, throat, yanked my windbreaker until I choked. And our bodies, all the while our bodies bathed in lamplight, amber, liquid in the carbon night. I remember that I screamed, that even then I didn't recognize the sound as coming from my own mouth, how it tore my lungs, my whole chest, more chemical blister than breath. The man dragged me into a thicket, though I do not remember being dragged. I simply remember coming to, my body no longer on the path, the unevenness of earth, grass. I'm going to die, the world empty, inky, vacuous. Maybe he'll just rape me. If he just rapes me, that'll be okay. The world empty, save a deer, ochre bolt, disturbed before sunrise, and the constellations, gateways, in some eternal night. Now, when I look out at the night, it appears denser, darker than it did before. In places, my vision blurs between the real and the imagined. I might be walking home, glancing from a window across the backyards, but the night looms unnatural. In places, I swear it swallows itself. I have grown used to it, slowly, across the years, this darkness that could hold a minotaur. And I know logically, in this era of microwaves and MRI scans, of probes, keyhole surgery, and satellites, that this is some echo of a traumatic event, some old weight that presses upon my eyes. But in that small time before sleep, as the night stains its way over this ancient sky, I let my thoughts drift, consider if there might be some arrogance to dismissing previous ways of seeing. Where did they go? All the gods and the beasts, the jackals and winged horses, sphinxes and fish, all those creatures that weighed our organs in the afterlife, fed on years ill-lived. What do they tow now, those creatures that carried the sun and the stars, drew the moon to its place in the firmament each night? In those hours, I consider whether this world really is lined in shadow, thin veil between spheres, whether when our bodies plunge, drag against, and fray the weave, a kind of night bleeds, dense, resinous, vast beyond means. Maybe it is in these moments when we almost cross over, when we believe we see the other side, that we blur the boundary between the living and the dead. that we bring a supernatural darkness back with us through the gauze. Stemming from the Latin lux, or light, Santa Lucia comes as beacon in name as well as martyrdom. Lucia is often conceptualized as a bringer of light, her significance understood somewhat simplistically as that of luminous salvation, a saint to banish the darkness, terrestrial and metaphysical alike. In Scandinavia, annual celebrations of St. Lucy involve young girls dressing in white gowns and walking a crown of candles through the church or home, a rather sanitized version of Lucia's martyrdom. But in northern Italy, tradition dictates that each December, on the eve of her feast day, Lucia leaves children gifts as they sleep. In anticipation, offerings of food crowd side tables, doorsteps, coffee for Lucia, bread for Castaldo, her escort, and a fistful of flour for her donkey. But the event comes with one condition. No child may see Santa Lucia, for if they do, the saint will throw ashes in their eyes, blinding them for the night. According to this belief, Santa Lucia appears as a figure who deprives sight, who might bestow darkness as much as alleviate it. No longer conceived in simple opposition to darkness and suffering, Lucia possesses a more complex, even tangled relationship to both. Her faith confirmed in violence, her martyrdom baptized by blinding. Santa Lucia is a light born of darkness, as much as a light to banish it. She understands long nights and their disturbing gifts, how they bestow ways of seeing, sights that cannot be unseen, how from darkness strange beasts come lumbering, fanged, shaggy, matted, how they pant from one's mouth, how they bite. Thank you very much.
But we have a mic. We have time for questions. Questions? Don't you want to know how that essay ends? I do. I'll have to read it, obviously. Yeah.
I'm just curious about your guys' like writing processes. How did you like start these projects? How did they come to be what they are, I guess?
Oh, great. I'll just stand up so you can see me. Thanks, Tsering, for passing that on. It's a rather unacademic response, but it's apt for Valentine's. I was about to give up writing altogether and go into accounting or something. And I was like, this ain't working out. I need money. And I don't know why accounting. I was just like, work with money, make money. Anyway, I met the woman who's now my wife, and we started talking, and I didn't write nonfiction at the time, and I was telling her these anecdotes about my mother. And she said, you should really write this and make a great personal essay. And I was like, nah. And then she left. We were both at a conference. I didn't have an excuse to get back in touch. So, and she was very busy. So I started writing so that I could have an excuse to be like, oh, you know, your suggestion. And she was like, yeah, okay, you know, like get out my inbox. And so I kept going, and really the project emerged from trying to get a date. And as I did it, I thought I quite like this nonfiction thing. And I kept going, and once it started to have some traction, I just realized there was a lot I enjoyed that I found really compelling, because I'd formerly worked in kind of cross-genre poetry fiction, and I was terrible at it. So it was a great shift.
Sorry. Whenever I get asked that question, I'm always like, I have no idea. you know. I think for me, the process is, there's this one piece of advice that a professor of mine gave me when I was at Columbia, and he said that, and he's quoting somebody else, I can't remember who it was, maybe Ian Forster, but that when you're writing a novel, it's sort of like driving in the fog at night, and you just need to be able to see like 5 feet ahead of you, and you can get all the way home that way still. So that's kind of how the writing process feels like and has felt like for me, which is just like I know just a little bit about what's coming, but I'm determined to, you know, I'm a stubborn person. So that's the other piece of it. Just like, you know, sheer determination mixed with comfortability with blindness.
Others.
Since Dr. Singer sort of asked but didn't, how does that essay end?
I mainly cut out the middle of that essay, so there's just one tiny little, there's kind of dream sequences. There's one small dream sequence after that, but you essentially got the ending minus one small snippet. But there's a lot in the middle that's been gutted, so it's a much longer. Sorry.
You survived.
Yes, unless I'm a wonderful haunting of GLCA, but yeah, I did.
Lots of writers in the room. All right. Well, I'm sure they'll answer questions in a less formal setting. So books are for sale at the back, and snacks are out in the lobby. Stick around. Thank you. Thank you.